Hey everyone, it's Meg. Welcome to another tree tutorial. A tree tutorial where I don't show you block for block how to build the trees behind me, but rather some basic principles on how to break them down into simpler shapes. And hopefully you can apply them to any tree, not just the ones I'm going to show you. So let's jump right in. This first tree we're going to build is the Baobab tree, which is actually a lot simpler than you might think it is. It might look a bit complicated, but it's really not that hard, and we only have 3 simple blocks to use for it. So we have stripped jungle wood, jungle fence, and acacia leaves just because I like the texture of it. Now because these trees in this video are so big, I'm just going to give you a basic idea of how to build them. It's not block for block, but it's just going to be some ideas that you can follow, and then you can adjust them to whatever size you're building. I hope it works for other sizes, but if you do it the size that I'm doing it, it should work fine. So we're going to start by creating a basic circle, and I don't want to go much bigger than this because this is a pretty good size when I was doing a test build of it. So I have 3 across on each side and then 1 in the corners to make that circle. Now I'm just going to take one of these sides, any side you want, and we're going to determine the height of the tree. So I'm just going to build up one of these sides, a few blocks, and then once I get about to the halfway point, wherever I decide that is, I'm going to go in a block and build up again. So we'll make it about that tall. That seems pretty good, and I'm just going to do the same thing on all the other sides, going up about halfway, going in and going up, and we're going to stop at the same place. Now it doesn't matter if these blocks exactly line up because we're just making it slant slightly to get that effect. It doesn't have to be exact. In fact, it looks a little better when it's not exactly the same. So let's just keep doing this. So now you should have something that looks like that. And all we have to do now is fill in the corners, which is pretty easy to do. So you're just going to go next to this one that we just built, start building up, and then once you reach this block, you can stop either 2 blocks away from it, 1 block. There is no exact method, but if you wanted one, that's what you could do. Then you're gonna go in and up all the way. And then again, with this one, you could stop at 1, you could stop at 2. It doesn't make much difference. Fill it in just like that. Now let's go to this side. We're just going to build up the side, go in, and go up. And then we just have 1 more to fill in, so we're just going to fill that in just like so. Now I usually like to do it where these do not line up at all, so I'm going to add an extra block there. So now they're all different heights. And it's just creating a nice organic shape along that corner. Now we have to do that same thing, just repeat it 3 times on all the other sides. It doesn't have to be exactly the same or exactly like this. I don't know how much more difficult this would be for a larger scale tree, but for the size we're working with, this works well. When you're finished, you should have something that looks like this. It looks very nice and smooth, organic. If you wanted to adjust them, you could. But then on the very top, we're just gonna go ahead and fill this in because the top of this tree is generally flat. So we're just gonna fill that in. And then we're just gonna take the full blocks and start building out branches. And these don't have to go out super far, but we are going to add a few fences to it too, so just keep that in mind. And you can make them go however you want. If you look up some pictures of these trees, the branches can go in just about any direction. So it might be nice to have some that even go down a little bit by a couple blocks and then kind of curve and twist and do all kinds of interesting things. So don't be afraid to do some wacky shapes. That one might not be quite right, but you get the idea. So you're just going to experiment with your branches. I don't really like how that one just sticks out from here, so I might start it from up there. Whatever, it's fine. And I'm just going to keep adding branches wherever I feel like they're needed. Now, generally these trees, the branches don't go up towards the center. So these bigger, thicker branches are just going to be going outward. And we can do some smaller branches that kind of push more towards the center if we need to with the fences. Right now we're just getting the basic shape. I still don't like this branch, so let me redo this one real quick. So just continue to do this all the way around, and it doesn't matter how many you have. Just keep in mind that wherever you put a branch is wherever the leaves will go, and this is just the first part of the branch. So we're gonna keep adding more. This is just the base of the branch. All right, I have a few branches made, as you can see. Make sure they're all the same distance away from the center so it's nice and even. And then I'm just gonna take my fences and start filling in some smaller branches. These can go, again, any direction you want, but I'm not building too many of them, just a few on the ends so that we can get that smaller look in the branches or have them branch out even more. So we're just gonna do this all around. I don't really know how to describe this right now, but you can see what I'm doing. I'm just placing fences wherever I think a branch is needed or wherever I think leaves are needed. If you look up pictures of these trees, you can kind of see what I'm going for. I'm not looking at a picture right now, but I did when I was practicing this, so I'm hoping I'm remembering this correctly. Alright, this is my tree so far. As you can see, I don't have a lot of branches going towards the center because that's just how these trees are. They kind of tend to stay on the edges. I don't see a lot of branches over here hanging down, so I might add a couple that kind of come down more and just make the shapes more interesting because I noticed there was a gap there. So feel free to fly around it or walk around it if you're in survival and just see if there's any gaps you're missing, any places you might want to fill in leaves. And it's okay if you have them disconnected too, by the way. It doesn't make or break your build, although this one, I'm going to leave it connected. Now, once you have your branches all in place, we're going to take our leaves and just start filling them in. It's that simple. Just make sure that as you're placing them, you're not doing a full block like this. You still want to have cut corners, and it's okay to have air blocks and things like that. It's okay to have them connected on the corners. You just want to randomly place them. In fact, I do like it better when they are connected on the corners sometimes. So just continue to fill in your tree. I hope this one is going to turn out okay because I haven't experimented a whole lot with this design, but we'll see. If you do need to reach closer to the center, it is okay to build off of your branches several blocks. You don't have to feel like you can only build right next to the branch. It's okay to go off a little bit, but in general, wherever you want the leaves to appear, you want to make sure there is a branch nearby for it to be attached to. But it's okay to go maybe 2 or 3 blocks away from that if you need extra detail or you need it to reach further. And we're just going to continue doing this for the whole tree. Alright then, when you have all the leaves in place, you can fly around your tree and see if it looks good. Generally these trees do have pretty flat tops, but if you did want to round it off, again, you could look at it from down here and see if it's looking too flat, and you could add some more height to it. So really, you don't ever have to be finished with it. You could keep tweaking it forever if you really cared. And there is our tree completed. I hope those techniques were able to help you figure out how you can build this kind of tree, especially in survival. I hope they were useful. I was experimenting on how to teach this, and I think that is the best way that I know how to show it. Next, we're going to build a giant sequoia, which is going to be much, much bigger than that last tree we built. And we're going to be using these blocks for our palette, which is just oak wood, spruce fence, and oak leaves. I threw in a spruce slab just in case you need it, although I don't really know if I'm going to use it or not. And this was the best color I could get to kind of match a sequoia. They do have a more reddish tone to them, but we're just going to be using the oak in this instance. You can always switch it out for a different block if you want to. So we're going to start this tree similar to the last one. It's going to have a rather large base. Well, large as in larger than the last one we did. So we're going to make it 3 across here, then we're going to do a corner and then 3 over there. It's going to be a slightly bigger circle than the one we did before. So let's just go ahead and repeat that around. So you should have a circle that looks something like this. Now you could make it bigger if you wanted it to be taller. Just keep in mind that the larger your circle is here, the much taller you're going to have to make the tree. So now that we have our base, let's go ahead and figure out the height. I know it needs to be extremely tall, so I'm just going to start on one side here and start building up. I'm not going to build up too high for this first one. Maybe about there, and then I'm going to go in one. Let's go up quite a ways. Again, I want this to be very tall, so I'm going to make that middle section a little bit longer, and then I'm going to make this one really tall. I don't even know how tall this is. And we'll start with something like that. So we'll start with this and see how we like it. So now that I have that height determined, let's go ahead and go to another end. And we're going to do that same thing over here. And we're just going to try to turn in around the same spot as there. It's okay if it's 1 or 2 blocks off. As long as it's around the same location, we're going to turn in and go up. And yes, if you are doing this in survival, expect to fall off a lot, or have an elytra on you as you're building it. That would make it so much easier. So we have 2 sides done. Let's go ahead and do the other 2. I'm not going to worry about this top part just yet. First, let's get a good distant look at this because I need to make sure I'm looking at it from a distance. So that's not going to be the top of the tree. We can make it go a little bit taller, but I think that's a pretty good base so far. Now all we have to do is fill in the sides, and this is really easy. You're just going to find the center post you just made, and we're just going to do the same thing again, just right next to it. And once we get to this one, I'm going to stop either 1 block below it or 2 blocks below it. 2 blocks might look a little smoother for taller trees, but it really doesn't make much of a difference, and you can always adjust it later. So then I'm just going to go up next to this one and stop there, then go up. And then once we get to the top, do the same thing, stop there, and go up into the middle. Now we're going to go to the opposite side over here and repeat that same thing. We're basically just going to work from the outside to the inside. And we want this to stop at a different level than that one. We can even stop at 2 below that one if we want to. All right, and now we just have 2 more to fill in. I'm just going to fill in this one next. Let's go ahead and stop at 2 lower and go all the way up here. And for this one, I want to stop here, so I'm just going to replace this with a straight edge. You can pull it up higher. I just like the much different heights there for all the different sections. And then this one, I'm going to stop up to here, pull this down, and if you're OCD, make that straight, make this straight. And there you go. I'm going to leave that one in the corner just like it is. So that is one side done. Now we're going to repeat that on all of the other sides. Remember, there is no right or wrong way to do it. It's just whatever looks good to you. But if it does help, stop 1 or 2 blocks below this and then just go in and do the next row. Alright, you should have the whole tree filled in at this point, and currently my tree is at 41 blocks tall, so if that gives you a good idea of where you could estimate, I think 50 blocks total for the height is a good estimate for that size base. I wouldn't go any smaller than that just because this tree is meant to be very, very large, so 50 blocks high total would be a good minimum for your tree. Mine is currently at 41, but we are going to make it taller right here, so right here in the center, I'm just gonna go ahead and make a little top part to it. And I'm just going to stack up the same way I did before, but this time much skinnier and making it come to a point. If this looks too stubby, I need to look at it from a distance to see if it's too stubby or not. Let's see, I just made a quick point there. And you just want it to look like a giant spike. So this looks like a pretty good start. And I think I can even make this part come a little bit higher, have it be a little bit wider of a spike. And then at the very top, we can also do our branches, but we're gonna do our branches all at once. So before we do that, let's go ahead and check the base of it and check the roots. This tree doesn't really have big roots that stick out, but it does have a slight slope on the end. So what I'm going to do is use my large blocks and just in some of these corners, add just a few extra just to create this slope effect that you can see right there. And if it looks like it's too much or you think it's sticking out too much, we can even just go in here with the slabs, put a few of these actual blocks here, but then put a slab in the front. So if you wanted to use those. Also, I think the bases are pretty round, so you don't want it to look too jagged or anything, although I don't like it looking perfectly round either because then it just looks too manufactured. I think that's the best word to describe it. So it's just eyeballing it and whatever you think looks the best. So there's a very basic slope on the end of our tree there. Now let's go back to the top and we're going to start adding the branches. Now a good rule of thumb for these branches is I'm going to do them in the top third of the tree. So starting from here and maybe down to here, I want to leave a lot of this exposed. And we're going to be creating a certain shape. We want it to be a cone-like shape as we create the branches. And the branches are really just a guide for wherever our leaves are going to go. So I'm just going to start at the top and figure out where the top of the tree is going to go. Actually, I want this one to go straight up. But you can branch off of it too. If you want to have little branches coming off of it, you can do that. And remember, we want this to come to a point at the top. So I'm going to leave that like that, and then just start adding branches around. If you are doing this tree in survival, I would recommend doing the branches from the top to bottom. I might be going all over the place since I'm in creative and I have that luxury, but if you are doing it in survival, that would be the easiest way to go about doing it. At least I think it is, because that's what I did when I did lots of trees in survival. So if it helps, work on your branches from the top down. And same goes for the leaves too. Once we start adding leaves, I think it's going to make things much easier. So I'm going really slowly right now. I could probably go a little faster, but it's okay to have your branches angle up. I don't really know if there's a specific angle. Closer to the top, I'm having them angle up, but then maybe closer towards the bottom of where they're going to land, we'll just have them go straight out. Just think about the weight of the branches and how they're positioned. These ones are probably still growing upwards, but once they get heavier, they're going to start falling downwards. So these ones at the bottom are definitely going to be heavier and falling downwards. So just think about that. You can also look up an actual picture of a tree and just kind of mimic what it's doing. That's basically all I'm doing here. Whatever is easiest for you. Needless to say, the larger the tree, the longer it's going to take to build, so just be patient with yourself and take your time and enjoy it. Remember to look at your tree from the top too, so you can get an overall look of how far the branches are spreading. I see I have one stray branch that's a bit longer than the rest, so I might trim that one. Of course, this perspective can skew it too, but also keep in mind that once we do add the leaves, they are going to make it stick out even more than it does. But there you can see we kind of have this cone-like shape. I want it to be pointy up there, a little bit more rounded on these sides. So the left side could use some work, But again, we can also use the leaves to really make the final shape. The branches are just here to give us a guideline on where those leaves are going to go. I think this is a pretty good start for our tree, and we're ready to add some leaves. We can always go back and add branches if we need to. Like I said before, if you are doing this in survival, I would say build the leaves from the top down, but since I'm in creative, I'm just going to start anywhere. But I think it is easier to start at the top down in survival. And you're just going to start placing the leaves. Place them about 2 to 3 blocks away from the branches. I mean, you don't want them to stick way out here like this. That's just too far away. They still want to look like they're attached, so keep them close by. And just start spamming them everywhere and filling in all these spaces. Connecting them on the corners also creates a very dynamic shape. So just keep that in mind to remove some blocks as you're placing them. You don't want it to end up looking like a giant cube of leaves. Alright, I think you get the idea of how to place leaves. I'm just going to do a quick time lapse for the rest of this tree since it's going to take me a while, and you can take all the time you need to work on yours. I finally finished the leaves. There they are done. You can see the overall shape we have where they're kind of rounded on the ends and then pointed towards the top. Of course, we don't want it to look perfectly round. We still want it to have jagged edges because it's a tree. And I think I filled it in pretty well. There are a few gaps in here, so I could probably put a few extra leaves in there on those fences that didn't get covered, but you get the general idea. And I do like having gaps in between the branches, like right there's a little gap. And over here's a little gap, so it doesn't have to be all clustered together, although you can have clusters. It's just whatever, because trees grow in so many different ways. And I think this was unintentional for me to have this extra branching down there, but I like the asymmetry it adds to this tree, and I think it looks rather nice. So you can see we have all the leaves towards the top of the tree and a very large base of this tree. And my tree ended up being 61 blocks tall, which I think looks really nice for that size base. But remember, if you wanted to make this tree even taller, you might need a slightly bigger base. Just make sure it's all proportional to each other, or just keep that in mind. If you did finish this giant sequoia at all, congratulations, because it is a lot of work. No denying that. Well, that's all for this video. Because these trees are so big, so large, I thought it would be better just to do the two. Anyway, I hope you learned some cool tips on how to do larger trees like this, specifically ones that have larger trunks. You could apply them to any tree really, and just make up the branches and the top, the crown of the tree as much as you want, but it is a good idea to model them after real-life trees like I did in this example. I do have several other tree tutorials on my channel if you want to check those out for more ideas and inspiration. But that is all for this tutorial, and I hope to see you in another one. Bye!